Hi, this is Andrea, and welcome back to the Mainstream Reiki YouTube channel. I hope that you've enjoyed different videos here that I've made for you on a variety of topics and the different playlists, many of which are for Reiki practitioners so that more Reiki practitioners can succeed in their practice and also succeed in their Reiki business if they want to. That playlist is called Reiki Business Success if you're interested in those sort of topics. And if you have any suggestions for future videos on any of the playlists, please let me know down in the comments under this video. Thanks for being here. Today's video is about cellular memory, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is. And then I'm going to let you into my Reiki practice where I'm going to give you 3 examples of how Reiki healed cellular memory for my clients. First of all, cellular memory is about memories and emotions being stored not just in the brain, but in other tissues throughout the body. You might have heard stories about patients having a heart transplant, for example, and they report that their personalities change after the recipient of someone else's heart. Scientific studies do support this idea of cellular memory, and so there's something about the intelligence of our cells, and this video isn't all about that, but what I wanted to talk to you more about is how in Reiki practice we might come across cellular memory in our clients, and I wanted to share some of my experience with that and also empower you so that you know that you can do this for your clients as well. And I always say the word clients, whether you do Reiki professionally or you're just seeing family and friends, just a quick little word to refer to whoever it is that you're offering Reiki to. The first example I want to share with you is about a client that came to me, a man who had been in the military, and I did know for a fact that he had gone overseas to Iraq and Afghanistan and was in combat there. I didn't know much more about him, but I did know that up front. He had never had Reiki before, and he stated on his intake form that he was suffering from PTSD and looking for ways to help him other than just the medication that he'd been prescribed. I helped him get settled on the Reiki table. He was lying down on his back, and I began the session seated on a stool at the head of the Reiki table, and I put my hands on his crown. It started pretty much like every other Reiki session for the most part, and I just began channeling that energy to him for his highest good. After the hand position at the crown, I believe I went to his ears, and if I remember correctly, there was a lot of energy flowing there at his head. But the remarkable thing to me was when I still was on my chair, on my stool, and I reached my hands down like this, and I put my hands like right here on his collarbone. And with my hands resting right there, it was almost as if I was magnetized to that spot. Like there was just no other place for me to be. I just really felt like I needed to be there. And so I held my hands there, and there was such an intensity. And I have to say, I don't necessarily feel a ton of energy, but what happens is it's more of an intuitive knowing that I have about what's going on, or about that there's a lot of energy flowing. So I might not feel a strong energy flow, but I know that a lot is happening, and I sort of feel it in my body a little bit, not feeling what he's feeling, but the best way I can describe it to you is if you imagine being on the outside of an airplane and you're holding on, right? You know, very connected to that airplane because you don't want to fly off in midair, but I'm holding onto the airplane, and it's as though the wind is coming at me and we're hurtling through the atmosphere, and it just feels like like that. I know that's kind of a weird way to describe it, but yeah, just a and I can just feel like a force, you know, moving. And once I thought, why would it be an airplane? What is that? Why am I seeing myself that way? And my guidance let me know that the airplane represented that we were moving. You know, progress was being made. We were going from point A to point B. So back to the story, I've got my hands there on his collarbone, just riveted there, not going to move an inch. And I'm just feeling that there's a lot of energy moving, and I've really just got to stay there because a lot is happening for him. I didn't really know what it was. And then when I wondered about what is going on here, then I began to have very clear imagery. It was like a movie, and I saw him in what looked like a desert town. There was lots of sand there, and even the buildings looked almost like they were made of sand. It's kind of hard to describe, or sand-colored stone. Anyway, so I saw him there, and it looked like he was in military uniform and everything. And something really interesting happened. I heard through my mind's eye blasts taking place, explosions. And what came into my awareness was that his body, his whole energy field, his whole body, every cell that comprised this man in that situation was forced to experience the energy of the blasts that he had going on around him. Every cell of his body experienced the waves of energy, even if it was just sound energy, because that is a wave as well. But every cell of his body was experiencing the energy of those blasts. I also felt emotions, not myself, but I felt that he had felt emotions of just anxiety, certainly not wanting to be there. Part of him wanting to escape that, but there's just, there's no choice. He's there. I felt as though the rippling through of his body, of that energy, stayed with him from that time. So that I would describe that as cellular memory. Those cells of his body had a memory of those experiences there. And maybe that was accurate, what I saw. Maybe it was not. I don't know. And I didn't really ask him at the end. But what happened was I just was riveted there. It was so vivid to me. And I just stayed in that location offering Reiki until all of that seemed to calm down. And I just didn't feel as though I needed to be there anymore. It was time to move on and go to other locations on or above his body. As we sat down in our chairs after the session to discuss it, he just really kept shaking his head back and forth, almost like in disbelief. And what he expressed to me was the sense of peace that he had in that moment. He was really at a loss to try to explain what just happened, because from his point of view, all he did was relax on the Reiki table while I lightly touched his body, or my hands were above his body. To him, that's what happened. And he felt of some sensations through the session, but nothing very earth-shattering or anything like that. But he just was trying to wrap his mind around what just happened. How could he explain the shift in his emotional state and feeling so calm and peaceful that he had not felt in he didn't know when. What I took away from that session was I did believe that I was correct in coming across the cellular memory in his body, and that the Reiki helped release that and unburden his cells, release those memories, so I wouldn't be operating with an undercurrent all the time of those memories residing still in his physical body. By releasing those memories and those emotions that went along with the memories, then he felt a complete change in him, and also described it as a lightness. He felt so light after the session. And that also indicated to me that he released a lot of energy during that session. Now, one thing I really want to convey to you is notice that I did not, when he came in and I knew that he was in the military and he was in combat, I didn't get into my brain and think, okay, how am I going to treat him? Where am I going to put my hands? What chakras are involved? I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't get my mind involved. And if you recall, he even put PTSD on his intake form. And with a diagnosis, I still didn't do that. I did it just like I do every Reiki session. And then the second thing that I want to bring up here is that I wasn't looking for cellular memory. When my hands went to that spot, the energy just took over. It wasn't like I had any skill whatsoever. It was just the Reiki working. That's it, the Reiki working. Now, as far as the imagery that I had and the awareness that I had, that was possibly correct. possibly not, for what was occurring, yeah, that is probably, a personal thing for me, not having to do with Reiki training at all. Now, would that healing have unfolded for him if I didn't have those visuals, if I didn't have that awareness? I absolutely believe so. Because when all I did was place my hands, and then a lot of energy started moving. And, I think that we all, as Reiki practitioners, have a sense of when we can move and when we can't. But I tell you what, we can't mess this up. So I tell you what, if I was not tuned in, if I didn't have that awareness and I moved quicker than what I did during the session, I'll bet you anything I would have gone to other locations and the healing would have just kept coming for him. Why? Because Reiki knows what it's doing. And so I was present. I just created an opportunity of him meeting the Reiki, and these wonderful, wonderful healing and releasing events occurred for him. And I have to tell you, if you don't get intuitive stuff, it does not matter. The Reiki is going to work. That intuitive stuff just helps. Perhaps it makes it more interesting, I think, for the practitioner, but it also, brings up even more questions. So sometimes I think it's just better to keep things simple, trust the Reiki. But I just want you to know, if you're not an intuitive person, if you're not seeing these things, it's fine. We're doing Reiki, and that is creating the opportunity for Reiki and our client to get together and allow healing to happen. That's it. So please don't ever think that you're less than, in the world of Reiki practitioners, if you do not get insights and intuitive guidance. Please just don't do that. Trust the Reiki. My second example of cellular memory is with another man that came in, and he was, I don't know, probably mid-40s or something. I don't think he put anything down on his intake form unless it was stress reduction or something like that. I don't recall anything physical. So again, I start the session, and I didn't get a lot of big imagery or anything like that with him. Every client's different. And that's totally fine. We have to take it as it comes. But the one bit of impression that I got for him was on his right shoulder when I was working there. It didn't come up at all on the left shoulder, but it was the right shoulder. And what came up was this feeling that this shoulder had just done something over and over, like a same motion over and over, and it was unhappy. Like it felt like it wasn't recent to me. I just had this kind of a feeling, is all I can really say, is like, whoo, this shoulder did a lot. I felt like it really needed attention with the Reiki energy. And that's about all I got. When we were finished and we were talking about the session, I brought that up to him and I said, yeah, it was just this shoulder. It wasn't the other shoulder at all. He just looked at me and he was really puzzled. And he's like, yeah, I don't know about that or whatever. We kept talking and talking. And then all of a sudden a light bulb went off in his mind. And he said, oh my gosh. He said, I used to deliver papers. And he was, I guess, really successful at it. And his route went on and on and on. And so he said he would throw these papers and he would do the same motion. And it was always with that shoulder. He said he hadn't thought about it in years. But he said, yeah, every now and again, his shoulder will act up and it will, be painful for him. But he said, yeah, it hasn't been doing it, lately. So I wasn't even, on my radar screen to easily remember when you brought up that shoulder. But he said, absolutely. And he says, every now and again, it does act up for him. So this is a second example of how I believe cellular memory was found by the Reiki energy and released so that he could hopefully have fewer incidents down the line of that shoulder bothering him. And as Reiki practitioners, we just have to hope that that's how it turned out for him. I never heard from him again about that shoulder, had seen him for some other things, but the shoulder never came up. My third example has to do with trauma being trapped in the body. And, my first example, I guess, had trauma as well, if you want to categorize it as that. But this is actually a little bit different. This client had had an accident, a car accident, and suffered some debilitating injuries during the car accident. And it really did change her life. It changed her life in very deep and profound ways as far as her independence. And she did have ongoing health-related issues to contend with. She was coming to me for Reiki about once a month or so, or twice a month if she could get there to my office. And once she was on the table, I'd seen her many times prior, but she was laying on the table and I went to go start the session, hands at the crown. And I was there for a few minutes. And as I thought about moving my hands, I looked down and I saw her long hair. It was just a very sudden sort of again, almost like a magnetism. I couldn't look away. I stared at her hair and it was as though I was riveted to her hair. So just me telling you these examples, it's interesting. There seems to be sort of a magnetism, a draw to these places for me. But anyway, I was just riveted to this woman's hair, looking at her hair, and I had to Reiki her hair, her long hair. And when I was asking in my mind, why am I doing this? The answer that came back to me was trauma, because at the impact of that accident, sort of like in my first example, the totality of this woman, every cell, every vibration of energy that is making up who she is, every bit of her went through that accident, the trauma of that accident, sounds of the accident, the emotions of the accident. And then in those just few moments of the accident, her whole life shifted. And what I was being guided to know is that all of that was recorded in her hair. She had never cut that portion of hair, whatever hair was growing out of her head in that moment, captured the trauma. And then it continued to stay with her and grow and serving almost as a record to what had occurred for her. I ended up just offering Reiki to her hair for several minutes, and then I just felt like it was time to move on again. And I went on and completed the session. I think it's interesting to note that out of all the times I saw her before that day, it never came up. And again, it wasn't anything that I thought of. It was nothing that I could plan. It just happened in the session. I am confident that with or without intuition, Reiki practitioners would stay in the right place, would put their hands where they needed to be. The Reiki's working with us. The Reiki doesn't pick and choose. I have every faith that the results of Reiki healing do not depend on anyone's ability to be psychic or in tune or intuitive. Just practice, just do Reiki, and you're doing wonderful things. And know that when you offer Reiki, that's all that is necessary for the highest good of your client. I hope what I've said today is helpful for you in your practice. And again, if you like the video, please like it and subscribe if you haven't already. That way I know that you're interested and it helps me be excited to make new videos for you. Ideas are always welcome too, so put them down in the comments and let me know what you would like to see, because I do really look at this channel as our channel. It's not just my channel. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, I wish you the highest Reiki blessings. Until next time.